I'm Charlene from Sound Sewing, Silverdale, Washington, and the FOF Creative Sewing Center, Lacey, Washington. We have promised to start doing some more videos on YouTube for you guys during this whole stay at home and social distancing. So I've been asking for some emails of some things you guys would like to see. One that I got a lot of emails on was how to do our mitered borders on our quilt. This is a quilt we just did in Embroidery Club, in both stores, and out here on the outer borders we had done a two-tone color mitered border all the way around. Here is our skinny small border along with our larger wider border that were mitered together on all four corners of our quilt. Okay, so to figure this out, you must measure your quilt. So this is before the borders go on, that I went across and measured the top of my quilt and I measured the side. You do want to measure all four sides to make sure your quilt is pretty square or rectangled in shape. So mine measured 20 inches on the top and 25 inches on the bottom. So to do the mitered corners, what you have to do is you have to decide what the total width of your border will be. So I have two pieces, and once they're sewn together, my total width of my border is going to be 5 inches. So that means I have to add 5 inches to both sides of my length of my border, as well as an additional 2. For an example, with my borders being 5 inches, I have to multiply it by 2 and also add 2 inches. 2 inches.
And it equals 12 inches.
That must be added to my 20 inches. So I'm going to cut this actually 20 plus 10 plus 2 makes it 32 inches long on my border, and also 37 inches for my other border. So I meant by the width of the border is, because I have two pieces, I was adding my total width being 5 inches is once my skinny border and my wide border have been added. So I have already figured that all out, but my two borders, because I had so much yardage of this main border, I decided to just go ahead and use the whole length. I didn't cut it down. My skinny border is the proper length. So to make sure that I'm getting them actually centered to each other, I'm going to fold my skinny border in half, just because they're not the same length. I'm going to put a pin in. I could save myself the heartache if I would just cut this one down, but I don't have to because I know it will fit. I'm going to fold that one in half, line up that half mark once I open it with the center of my skinny border. You can see what I mean, how my skinny border, which is proper length, is shorter than my other one. This way I know that I'm getting them even on both sides. So I'm just going to now come to my machine, making sure, using my 1/4 inch foot, because that's the seam I used all the way through. Then I'm going to just lower my foot. Don't need to worry about doing a tack. And I'm going to do a 1/4 inch seam all the way down my strip. So now I have already sewn my skinny border to my wider border. So I want to iron this. You should always iron your seam towards the border you want to pop forward. I want my skinny border to pop forward, so I need one of my seams to go towards it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that to this one. The good hot iron, I'm just going to really quickly iron down the seam to help soften the fabric. And then I'm just going to start pressing it out. Go straight out with it. If you go crooked, your border will go crooked with you. So we're just going to go straight out with a nice, good, hot iron. All right, so now I've got all my borders done, double bordered. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my quilt. I was in my sewing room during this whole stay at home. I found all these blocks that have been floating around my sewing room forever. So I just threw them together to make a very busy, flowery thing. So, a quilt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to fold it in half. On the first side I want to put my border on to find the center. Cat fuzz. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our border. We're also going to fold it in half. And we line up my skinny border raw edge to the raw edge where the pin is. So here's where I put the pin for my middle of the quilt top. And here is where I've creased the center. Fingers don't work very well. And then I'm going to put a pin there. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to put a pin down here where the beginning is. So I'm putting a pin so I know where the beginning is. Okay, now when I start to sew, to do inset point mitered borders like we're getting ready to do, it's very important to start a full 1/4 inch in from the edge. So what that means is on a lot of our quilting feet we have where we have a red line in the center, that was where our needle is, a red line in back for a 1/4 inch behind our needle, and then a red line in front for a 1/4 inch in front of our needle. So when I start to sew, I am going to line this up so that my line behind is lined up with my topping fabric. So my needle is going to start exactly a 1/4 inch in. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to see my raw edge here, I'm going to bring it in to my machine. I'm going to make sure I'm lined up on the 1/4 inch edge right here. And then I also am making sure that my raw edge here on my quilt top is lined up with this red mark. That is perfectly a 1/4 inch in. So I'm going to come forward and I'm going to stitch back, making sure not to go back farther than my 1/4 inch 1/4 inch starting point. Very important. And now I'm going to sew all the way down to the other end, also stopping a 1/4 inch in front. Okay, so now I'm starting to come to the opposite end, and so I need to also stop a 1/4 inch from the end here. So that means this red line needs to be met here for me to stop, and I will bar tack as well. Okay, giving me a perfect 1/4 inch. Now we have the first side on. We are ready to now apply the second side. So I'm going to do the same thing where I find the center of my border and the center of my quilt. And then we're going to now find the center. And just like we did before, I'm going to put the pin and put them directly lined up just so that I can have them as close to center as possible. We do have a two-way margin because we added that 2 inches. So if it's not exact, it's okay. I actually have the convenience of having that stitch that we did before. So that stitch we did before, which is right here, if I pull this over on the brown, you can see it better. So right here, that is where I am going to come and line up my pin for my first one so that I am lined up directly with that. Then, let me get that pin straight, because I did that, but I made it worse. There we go, now I'm lined back up. So I did that because that is where actually my needle will need to start, because that is already a 1/4 inch in, and I know that because I used my foot to find it. So let me just try to get all this fabric in here and be able to let you see at the same time. I do apologize, I know that's kind of hard. But basically what I'm doing is I did not iron this yet. I'm just gently pulling it this way to kind of pull it open. I have not ironed it yet. Then I have my needle lined up right with my pin, which is where, I have it lined up right with my pin, which is right here and coming out this way, which is right where my 1/4 inch is. I am going to pull out that pin. Do not sew on your pins. Okay, Mom. Now you're going to come forward and then go backwards a few stitches. Again, making sure not to go too far back, and continue. And you're going to sew this one exactly the same way you did the other one, stopping a 1/4 inch at the other end. Okay. Now, if you were successful It's going to be really hard to see, and I do apologize for that, but these two should join, that they actually just come up and kiss each other. Those stitch points, so the stitch coming this way and the stitch going this way should not be any farther than kissing each other. If one's too far up, you'll have a pinch in it. If you have a gap, you'll have a hole. Now we're ready to actually do the mitered corner. I'm going to use my iron for this. So what I'm going to do now is I have my right side of my border right here open. I'm just going to do a little press right here. Okay. Sorry about that, Ann. Now my top one I have still closed but going across. You do not need a special ruler to do mitered borders. So with our top one up, with our right one up, our top one right side down going across, I'm going to take this one and I'm going to fold it down until I'm against that stitch point, and look what happens. My top border literally lines up with my bottom border on the seams and straight across. I'm going to give this a good press. So even shoot with some steam, which actually I think I accidentally squirted water at Ann instead of steaming. Sorry, kiddo. And then I'm going to open this up and you will have a crease right here. Okay, so just for web vision, I don't normally do this step, but I'm going to do it for you guys, is I'm going to go ahead and draw a line on that fold in hopes that you'll see this crease better. Okay, so hopefully you can see that I marked it. If that does make it easier for at home, feel free to mark it, because I know that after a while the crease can kind of relax and not give you such a nice clean looking crease. Then I'm going to take this border and my quilt and I am going to pivot this. Okay, so let me show you that again in case you want to see that again. So that's usually where I lose people.
I'm looking at witchcraft right now.
So again, I'm going to take this border in this quilt and I want this border laying on top of this border, so I got to turn this. So I'm kind of folding my quilt into a triangle right now. Then I'm going to line up these borders right on top of each other. Then I'm going to grab my pins. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to stick a pin right through the end of that stitch point and that stitch point at the end on the other side. So that's my first pin. Then make sure I line these back up again. Again, they gotta be lined up this way. And I stick another pin there. And back to the sewing machine. Here we are back at the sewing machine. And remember where that pin is, right here, that very first pin? That's where my needle needs to go. And I'm going to physically sew directly on that line I actually drew, or the fold, if you didn't draw the line. So right underneath, lower my needle right to that pin. Don't sew over your pins, take it out. I'm going to come forward a little bit, back tack a little bit, and sew all the way down that fold. If you need to readjust as you go, go ahead. Again, pull out your pins. I open it up. I have a perfect mitered corner. All right, so back at the yarny board, I did went ahead and checked it one more time before I do this. You want to open it up and just do like just a nice little hand press first. Make sure that we're not pinching, we don't have a hole. Then what we're going to do is we're going to come in with our scissors. Or we're going to cut. These are the worst scissors in the world.
Remember to cut on the correct side of the stitches so you don't have to sew it again.
Oh, that'd be bad. I am leaving a 1/4 inch seam here. Put your scraps to the side. And I'm going to come to the iron now and we'll give it its final press. And beautiful mitered corners. You can do this with 1 fabric, you can do it with 3 fabrics, or you can do it with 2. You can do as many as you like. They're all done the same way. The secret is to make your border first, whether you're doing 1 to 3 pieces, sew them all together so you miter them all at once. Have fun.